Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 254 to 255 for the 4th and the 5th of November. And let's start off with rather serious news for the Ukrainian side. There is a report by CNN claiming that 1,300 satellites has stopped working for Ukraine, and this was turned off actually due to the lack of funding. So because there is not enough money to go towards Elon Musk, and the Elon Musk also do not want to really take the losses for a war that he don't believe in. So maybe that's why, but of course it's by CNN. Believe it at your own risk. So and then there's a more serious news which is more verifiable. The commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Valery Zaluzhny, his Instagram account was hacked by the same hacker group that hacked into the Delta command and control system. And the Delta command and control system is the one that is actually used by the NATO forces as well, and Ukrainian forces actually use it to monitor the entire strategic picture. It's something like our map, but way more detailed. And the hacking is very big. It's a big thing, but this is even bigger because his own personal Instagram account was logged in, and then was hacked, and then they have released a 25 freaking minutes long tour of his Instagram private messages. Particularly people like to highlight his conversation with some pretty girls, which I read that they were actually soldiers as well. So yeah, you can actually find the link on the DPA's Telegram channel. Find the link in the description below. And but the Ukrainian armed forces have reported they have shot down 2 Ka-52 over the past day. And moving on to the southern front, at the Mykolaiv front, we have nothing to report. There's no fighting reported here. Over at the Kherson front, where the Kherson super duper uber offensive is still ongoing. Before we go to the offensive, there is a Ukrainian MiG-29 that is shot down over Veliko Oleksandrivka, which is one hell of a far away. It's around like 80 kilometers from the front line. So I'm not sure what the Russians are using, to take out all these aircraft from such a long distance. And at the Kherson offensive, the Ukrainians now focusing mostly towards the bank of Dnipro River, where they are fighting from the direction of Tryfonivka towards Pyatikaki. And there is also the attack from the direction of Shavone towards Sablokivka, as well as Sukhanove. So the interesting thing is that the Ukrainians wanted to capture Sablokivka. I'm not sure why they would want to do that, because there is a Russian artillery on the other side. So it does seems to be not a very safe place to actually go for. But somehow the Ukrainians wanted for me, I would have just went for Milove rather than you go on this part where you could have just encircled. So anyway, this is the Kherson offensive. And moving on to the Zaporizhzhia Line. So at the Zaporizhzhia Line, this is Zaporizhzhia region. So we are now here. At the Zaporizhzhia region, this is the Zaporizhzhia Line. The line actually consists of 4 different towns. So we have Kayamske, Orikhiv, Huyaipole, as well as Velika Novosilka. So and so this 4 forms one defensive line that is absolutely crucial for the Ukrainians to hold. If not, the entire eastern front may collapse due to the breakage of reinforcement and resupply. So anyway, the fighting is now at Vremivka. So the Russians, after the Ukrainians have tried to attack the high grounds where the Russians are holding up at, now the Russians have launched their own offensive towards Vremivka. So this is reported interestingly by the Ministry of Defense of Russia themselves, and they usually do not report on offensives. So they usually report on the defending operations, which is very similar to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry as well. Both sides don't really like to talk about offensives, but when the Russians do talk about the offensive, maybe there's some objective to why they are doing this, to report about this. Maybe is to put pressure, because the other part where they are reporting the offensive is at Pelivka. So Pelivka is still not captured by the Russian forces. They are still trying to capture this entire settlement. The Ukrainian forces continue to have forces within the town, and but generally speaking, the Russians actually have the southern bank of the Kalahach River, and the Ukrainians have the northern bank. The fighting is reported for the past 2 days up to today. Today's the latest report. Continue to report that Pelivka is still fighting, and there is also fighting reported at Mykolaiv, and this report is by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 4th. They talk on the 4th there was fighting. They were defending, and then in today's report, the Russians report that they are the one attacking. So very interesting. Both sides, both Ministry of Defense, actually verified and corroborated each other that there is some serious fighting over at Mykolaiv. And moving on to the western side of Donetsk, there is fighting at Marinka on the past 2 days, and over here at the northwestern side of Donetsk city, there is fighting reported at Povomaysky as well as Nevelsky. So on the 4th of November, it was not reported on the 5th though, and there is also fighting reported at Kayamka on the 4th. So the report around the Adivka region is primarily talking about on the 4th, and somehow there's no more reports for yesterday. And that's all from the entire of Donetsk front. The Russians mainly concentrate on here in the more western side of the Donetsk front, and then you on the more eastern side, they totally ignored the entire New York region over here, as well as this largely very minimal reports of fighting over at the Bakhmut region, as well as Adivka region. The fighting seems to be like a massive strategic pincer over at Donetsk, one on the most eastern edge, one on the most western edge. Seems to be that case. Moving on to the Bakhmut Front. Sorry, the orientation also makes me confused. So I just for those for the benefit of those that was saying that you should not turn the camera this much. The reason is because the way how the Google Earth works, all these words, some of the wordings actually will disappear if it's overlapped. So I have to turn in order to read, and sometimes it just makes it look more dynamic. And over at Mayos, there is fighting reported at Mayos on the 4th and on the 5th. Zoom in enough, you still can see the words. And further up north, there is fighting at Ozyarenivka. This is part of this revival of this Wagner Group offensive. The Wagner Group have stayed quiet for the past few days already, and over the past 2 days, suddenly fighting start to be reported and flare up again. So they are pushing multiple locations on Mayos, Ozyarenivka, and the Ukrainians actually counterattack at Kupyansk. Somehow they are counter-attacking seemingly without a bigger major plan. Maybe they are trying to do something interesting, but it did not work out the way they wanted. And then yesterday there is reported fighting at Andriivka. This is one of the locations of fighting that is a bit more rare. And then there is fighting reported at Klishivka the day before. And interestingly, another part of the counter-offensive by the Ukrainians is actually at Opaine on the 5th. However, the Russians, the Ukrainians themselves reported that it's the Russians that's attacking. The Russians say it's the Ukrainians that's attacking. So one of them must be right. And then there's also fighting at Ivanrad around here. It's still disputed. We still do not actually know who exactly is controlling Ivanrad. And there is fighting reported southeast of Bakhmut. And there is also fighting reported at Bakhmut. Although this one is a bit more unclear because the Ukrainian Defense Ministry just say that it's fighting at Bakhmut. Because fighting at Bakhmut can just simply mean the one at the southeast. So, and over at the most northern part of the Bakhmut front, we have fighting reported at Bakhmutsky over the on the 4th and the 5th, and there is also fighting reported at Yakovlivka. And so that's all from the Bakhmut front. Over at the Siversk Front, the Russians Wagner Group continues to attack at Berestove. at Sperne, as well as below Horivka. They have been trying to attack below Horivka, but the Ukrainians are really good at defending this location. The below Horivka, before the Russians captured it previously, it was also a very hard place to conquer. So the Ukrainians simply, just very good at below Horivkaing the Russians, really, scarred. Moving on to the Liman and Kreminna region. At the Kreminna Front, there is fighting reported at Yampolivka. This is reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. So interesting that the Ukrainians actually say that the Russians are attacking this location. And but this also contrasts deeply with the attack at Shevonopopivka and Terny on the 4th of November by the Russian side. So this is reported by the Russian Defense Ministry, if I'm not wrong. Yes, by the Russian Defense Ministry, where they say that the Ukrainians continue to try to push towards this direction. And there's heavier fighting reported at Ploshchanka, where Ploshchanka actually holds this road to Makivka over here. And the fighting continued to be pushed towards this junction here. And moving on further up north, so that's all from Kreminna. The attack of the Ukrainians are still ongoing further up north, but on the south it seems like the Russians have eliminated this offensive and seems to go on the counter offensive. Moving up further up north over at the Svatove Front, at the Svatove region, the Ukrainians are attacking Stelmakivka, also at Kolomishka. It looks very Japanese name to me. Kolomichichka, whatever. Miaso Zarivka. So these are the few locations you can see. Basically, it's just concentrated around this region. It's a very major assault across the entire front, fighting at Berestove, Kuzemivka, Stemakivka, and Kolomichivka, as well as Miaso Karivka. So all this in the direction towards Svatove, as you can kind of imagine. And further up north over the Kupyansk, eastern side of Kupyansk city, the fighting is reported at Yakhine, Kaislivka, as well as Kotlyarivka. So Kotlyarivka is reported on today by the Russian Defense Ministry. And as you can see, if you zoom out a bit, the Ukrainians are doing their own strategic pincer, one main force all across this entire northern side of the Oskil front. Across the entire Oskil river is here, and then on the southern side around the Kreminna region, there's a southern flank. So it's interesting how similar it seems between the Russian and the Ukrainian offensive. Over at the Kharkiv Front, the old happy front, there is reported fighting at Zibaine. So at Zibaine, this is just a very tiny town. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported that the Russians attacked this location. I don't think it will amount to anything, because if it's some bigger major attack, we will have seen the Russian sources or the pro-Russian side celebrating it. So that's all from the Kharkiv Front, and that's all for the day of 254 and 255 for the 4th and the 5th of November, and I'll see you in the next update. Ciao.